Chapter 1: The Unseen Path. Luca had always lived in the shadows, hidden from the world that seemed to pass him by without a second glance. He had learned early on that the best way to survive was not by standing out but by blending in. Yet, something inside him, a deep, unshakable restlessness, drove him to seek something more. But what that more was, he didn't know. It all started on a damp winter morning, as fog curled around the edges of the cobblestone streets. The city of Rome, in its eternal grace, lay asleep under the cover of a gray sky. Luca, however, had never been one for sleep. He was a creature of the night, moving through its quiet hours like a shadow. His world was one of silence, save for the hum of the city and the occasional passing of a car. He knew every inch of the city's underbelly, the narrow alleys, the forgotten corners, the places where people who didn't belong, like him, gathered. This morning, as the sun barely pierced the clouds, Luca found himself standing outside an old, decrepit building, a building that had haunted his dreams for years. He had never been this close before. His heart beat faster than usual as he ran his fingers along the cold, weathered stone. It wasn't just a building to him, it was a symbol, a representation of something he had been chasing for as long as he could remember. Luca's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind him. He turned, instinctively, his hand hovering near the small pocket knife he always kept on him. But it was only Marco, his closest friend, the one person who seemed to understand his inner turmoil. Marco's presence was always a comfort, yet today, even his familiar face did little to ease Luca's tension. "You're still here, huh?" Marco asked, his voice soft but tinged with concern. Luca nodded, his gaze returning to the building before him. "I have to go in, Marco. I've been searching for this place my entire life." Marco frowned. "What do you think is inside? The answers you're looking for?" Luca hesitated. He wasn't sure what the answers were, or even if they existed. But something pulled him, some invisible force that made him feel like the world was urging him to take this step. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I have to find out. This is the only way." With a sigh, Marco placed a hand on Luca's shoulder. "I'll be here when you come back. Just be careful." Luca didn't respond. He couldn't. There was too much at stake, and the path ahead was too uncertain. All he could do was push forward, even if it meant walking alone. The door creaked as Luca pushed it open, the smell of mildew and dust immediately assaulting his senses. He stepped inside, his footfalls muffled by the thick carpet of dirt and debris that covered the floor. The air was thick with the weight of history, as if the walls themselves held the secrets of the past. Luca's fingers grazed the cracked surfaces of the furniture, the remnants of lives once lived in this forgotten place. He moved deeper into the building, drawn by an inexplicable force. Each step felt heavier than the last, and the shadows seemed to stretch out before him, as if they were alive, waiting to consume him. But he pressed on, determined to reach the heart of the building, the place where his destiny awaited. It wasn't long before he reached the basement door. The heavy wooden door was adorned with strange symbols, symbols that Luca had seen before in the pages of old books, in the whispers of those who had come before him. These were the signs of the ancients, the ones who had left their mark on the world long before Luca's time. His hand trembled as he placed it on the door's handle. He was about to enter a world he didn't fully understand, but he couldn't turn back now. He had come too far. The door groaned as it opened, revealing a dimly lit staircase that descended into the depths of the building. Luca's heart raced as he took the first step, his breath coming in short, anxious bursts. The air grew colder as he made his way down, the silence around him almost oppressive. But then, as he reached the bottom of the stairs, he saw it. In the center of the room, illuminated by a single flickering light, was a pedestal. And on that pedestal lay a book, an ancient tome, its cover worn and faded with age. Luca's heart skipped a beat. He had found it. With trembling hands, he reached out and took the book, feeling the weight of it in his palms. The moment his fingers brushed the cover, a surge of energy coursed through him. The world around him seemed to shift, and for a brief moment, he could hear whispers, soft, distant whispers that echoed in his mind. Luca opened the book. The pages were filled with strange, cryptic symbols, symbols that seemed to dance on the page as if alive. He couldn't understand them, but he knew they were important, more important than anything he had ever encountered in his life. He had found the key. The key to his past. The key to his future. But as Luca stood there, holding the book, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The real journey had just begun. And he was not alone in this quest. A figure stood in the shadows, watching him intently, waiting for the moment to reveal themselves. The game was about to begin, and Luca had just unwittingly stepped into a world far darker and more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. Chapter 2: The Hidden Path. Luca's heart raced, not from fear, but from something much deeper, an insatiable need to uncover the truth. The book in his hands was heavy with power, its ancient pages brimming with secrets. As he carefully turned them, he could feel the weight of the history it contained, as if it were speaking directly to him. The whispers in his mind grew louder, more urgent. They seemed to beckon him, calling him deeper into the mysteries that awaited. But Luca paused, his eyes scanning the dim room. Something wasn't right. He felt, watched. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, and every instinct screamed at him to turn around. But before he could, the air in the basement shifted. A cold breeze rushed past him, extinguishing the flickering light above the pedestal. Darkness flooded the room, and Luca felt the book's weight in his hands become heavier, as if the very essence of the place was pulling at it. He wasn't alone. Footsteps echoed from behind him, slow and deliberate. Luca spun around, his pulse quickening, but the shadows remained still. He could see nothing, but the feeling of being watched intensified. "Who's there?" Luca called out, his voice betraying the tension he felt. For a moment, there was no response, just the eerie silence of the underground chamber. But then, a low voice broke through the stillness, sending a chill through Luca's spine. "You've come far, Luca. But you are not meant to be here." Luca's grip on the book tightened. "Who are you? What do you want?" A figure emerged from the darkness, tall and cloaked in shadows. Their face was obscured, but Luca could sense the coldness in their presence, an unnatural aura that seemed to warp the air around them. "You have awakened something," the figure said, their voice deep and almost haunting. "Something that should have remained hidden." Luca's mind raced. "The book, it's mine. I found it." "Found it?" The figure laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think you found it? It was never meant to be found. Not by you." The figure stepped closer, their presence becoming overwhelming. The coldness in the air grew, as though the very room were holding its breath. "Who are you?" Luca demanded again, his voice shaky but firm. "I am the keeper," the figure replied simply. "And I am the one who ensures the secrets of this world remain buried. You, Luca, are nothing more than a pawn in a game that stretches beyond your comprehension." Luca's heart pounded in his chest, but the book in his hands seemed to pulse with energy, its power drawing him closer to the truth. He couldn't back down now. "You're wrong," Luca said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm not a pawn. I've spent my whole life searching for this. And now that I've found it, I'm going to uncover every secret it holds." The keeper's eyes glinted in the darkness, their gaze cold and calculating. "You don't understand what you're dealing with, Luca. That book, it's more than just a collection of words. It is a key, yes, but not to the answers you seek. It is a key to something far darker. And once you open it, there is no going back." Luca swallowed hard, his mind racing. He had no choice now. The book was his destiny, whether he understood it fully or not. And no one, no matter how powerful, was going to stop him from discovering the truth. "I don't care what you say," Luca replied, his voice unwavering. "I'm taking it." Without another word, Luca turned and sprinted up the stairs, the keeper's footsteps following close behind. He could hear the figure's voice trailing after him, faint but unmistakably filled with warning. "Do you think you can escape this? Do you think you can outrun what you've unleashed?" Luca ignored the voice, focusing only on reaching the exit. His feet pounded against the cold, hard steps, and his heart raced in his chest. The darkness pressed in on him from all sides, and he felt the weight of the book growing heavier with every step. He reached the door, the one that led out of the building, his hand already on the handle. But as he pulled it open, a blast of cold air slammed into him, knocking him off balance. The door shut with a deafening thud, trapping him inside. The basement was now completely black, the only sound the frantic pounding of Luca's heart. And then, through the silence, came a whisper, a voice that sent a shiver down his spine. "You've awakened the wrong thing, Luca." Before he could react, the room around him seemed to shift. The walls began to close in, the shadows twisting into unnatural shapes. The air felt thick with something ancient, something hungry. And suddenly, Luca knew. He had made a grave mistake. Chapter 3: The Spiral. Luca stood frozen, the book clutched tightly in his hands as the darkness thickened around him. He could feel the air growing heavier, the atmosphere suffocating, as if the room itself were alive, breathing, watching, waiting. The walls seemed to pulse with an unseen energy, the shadows warping and twisting into grotesque forms that danced in the periphery of his vision. His mind raced, heart pounding in his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his feet felt like they were cemented to the floor. He couldn't move. Then, from the depths of the shifting shadows, a low, rumbling voice broke through the eerie silence. It wasn't the keeper's voice, nor was it any voice Luca recognized. It was ancient, filled with an otherworldly power that resonated deep in his bones. "You are foolish, Luca," the voice echoed, a deep growl that reverberated through the very air. "You have trespassed into a realm you cannot begin to understand." Luca's breath caught in his throat, his mind struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what he had just done. This wasn't just some ancient secret he had stumbled upon, it was something far worse. Something that had been hidden for a reason. The book in his hands began to hum, vibrating with an unsettling energy. It seemed to come alive, as if it were responding to the voice that had spoken. The pages fluttered, and Luca instinctively stepped back, almost dropping it in the process. "No," Luca whispered, his voice trembling, "I didn't mean to. I didn't know." The voice laughed, a sound that sent chills through his body. "You did not know, but now you do. And now, you will face the consequences of your actions." The shadows surged forward, twisting and writhing like living creatures, and Luca felt an intense pull, like gravity itself was trying to drag him into the abyss. His pulse raced as he realized that he was being drawn toward the heart of this dark force. The book's hum became louder, more insistent, as if it was calling him, compelling him to move closer to whatever was waiting in the depths of the room. "Stop!" Luca shouted, but his voice felt small against the overwhelming presence. He took a step back, then another, but no matter how far he moved, the shadows crept closer. In the distance, the keeper's voice broke through the chaos, now clearer, more urgent. "Luca, you must understand. There are things in this world, forces beyond our control, that should never be unleashed. That book is a bridge. A gateway. It connects this world to the next. But only if you're willing to make the sacrifice." Luca's eyes widened. "What sacrifice? What are you talking about?" The keeper stepped forward, their figure emerging from the shadows. The cloak they wore billowed around them, but Luca could now see their face, a face that was impossibly old, marked by the passage of centuries. Their eyes were cold, as if they had seen too much and had long since given up on hope. "The book you hold is a key, yes," the keeper said, their voice tinged with regret. "But it's more than that. It is a door. A door that opens to another world, a world that has been sealed for a reason. But to open it, you must make a choice. You must offer something in return." Luca's mind reeled. "What do you mean, offer something? What does that even mean?" The keeper's eyes darkened. "The balance of the world must be maintained. To open the door, something must be sacrificed. A soul, a life, something precious to you." Luca shook his head, trying to make sense of the impossible situation. I don't understand. Why me? Why now?" "Because," the keeper's voice dropped to a whisper, "you were always meant to find it. And now, it's too late. You have awakened the darkness, Luca. And there's no going back." The shadows began to swirl around Luca, tightening their grip. The temperature in the room dropped, and his breath fogged in the icy air. The book vibrated violently in his hands, the pages flipping on their own, as though it were trying to tell him something that made his blood run cold. A single word flashed across the pages: sacrifice. The word burned into Luca's mind, and a deep, hollow dread filled his chest. His vision blurred as the room seemed to twist and warp, as though the walls themselves were bending to the will of the darkness. The book's energy surged once more, and Luca felt the sharp, undeniable pull of the other world. In a panic, Luca tried to throw the book away, but his hands refused to release it. It was as if the book had become a part of him, fused with his very essence. Desperation clawed at his chest, and for the first time in his life, Luca felt truly powerless. I can't, he whispered to himself. I can't do this. The ash in the wind. The power within it, the dark, malevolent force, began to dissipate, swirling and spiraling as though it were being sucked back into the void. The shadows recoiled, their twisted forms writhing and dissipating into nothingness. For a moment, everything was silent. The air was still, the weight that had pressed so heavily on Luca's chest suddenly lifted. He looked around, unsure of what had just happened. Had he succeeded? Had he stopped it? Then, a figure emerged from the shadows, the keeper, their face no longer cold, but filled with something Luca couldn't describe. Regret? Understanding? Maybe even respect? You've chosen, the keeper said, their voice softer now. You've broken the cycle. Luca stood there, still processing the enormity of what had just occurred. The shadows were gone. The oppressive darkness had lifted, and the room felt lighter. The weight of the book had vanished, its power no longer lingering in the air. But Luca knew that the price for this victory was not yet clear. There would be consequences, no doubt. The world had been changed, and so had he. As he turned to leave, he glanced back at the keeper, whose expression had softened. Thank you, Luca said quietly. The keeper nodded, a faint smile playing at the corner of their lips. Remember, Luca, the greatest power lies in the choices we make. And sometimes, the greatest strength is knowing when to walk away. With that, Luca stepped out into the world beyond. The fog had lifted, and the city of Rome stretched out before him, silent, waiting. But Luca knew that the journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. The end.